Hey everybody. So in this video, what we're going to talk about are music switches. Again, we're talking about the music structures inside of Wwise, these interactive music structures. We started with wave files. Wave files go onto tracks. Tracks go into segments. Segments went into playlists, which were our last video. Now, if we want to switch between two different types of music, we can do that within the game. So we have two locations, and one of the locations is a castle and the other one is the forest. When we go from the castle to the forest, we want to switch from the castle playlist to the forest playlist. And we can set up those structures inside of Wwise through a switch to switch between different playlists. So that's what we're going to do next. I'm going to rearrange a little bit of the segments and playlists that I created before. So I have this playlist now, and I'll call this Explore, and this will be just that first phrase only. It could be more, but I'm going to go ahead and kind of just play in the playlist that I have here. I'm going to go ahead and delete these here. I'm using the delete key, by the way. So I'm just playing this one phrase over and over and over again, representing just that string ostinato without the horn above it. And what I'll do is I'll create a new playlist here. So another playlist container. And I'm going to call that Holst Mars playlist. And I'll call this suspense. And I'm going to move phrase to 2 here. Now remember, creating playlists is a 2-step process. One is I created the playlist with the correct phrase inside of it, but I haven't actually set it up inside the playlist here. So make sure that you have the playlist open and that you drag that phrase into the playlist container itself. So we have to set it up in the hierarchy, and then we also need to tell it what order to play in. So again, the horn version plays this, and the Explorer plays just the ostinato. And we want to switch back and forth between those two inside the game. So let's go ahead and do that. I have these two playlists now. I don't need this example file, so I'm going to delete that just to clean up my project a little bit. And I can select these two playlists that I have, and I can create a new parent which switches between them, called a music switch container. And I'm just going to call it music switch container, but it could be like level 1 or level 2. In fact, in a very large project, I may have lots of switch containers and switch containers within switch containers, which we'll get to in a future lesson. So I want to switch between this Explore and Suspense, the ostinato versus the one with the horn, because somewhere in the game I want to switch between them. The game would say, all right, well, you're in the castle now. I want the horn, and when you're not in the castle, I want just the string ostinato, for instance. Okay, so they're in this switch container, but we have to kind of tell Wwise what game parameter that we want it to cue from. And now we're going to go from the audio tab to the game syncs. Game syncs is kind of where we set up the various parameters or states that the game is sending to Wwise. So we're going to use a state group, and we're going to call it location. So I'm going to right click on the default work unit. I'm going to create a state group and call it location. And then I'll have 2 locations. So I want to go ahead and again create a new child of that, which would be castle. And then another location we'll create is the forest. So I have these 2 locations, and the game is going to match this. The game is going to send over this data to us, and we'd have a programmer on the Unity or Unreal team kind of set that up for us. And then in the audio tab, we have this switch, and so I'll select the switch here, And what I want to do is make sure to flip over to the music switch here. And music switch, I want to make sure, basically I want to drag in, or I want to select, well, what state group is controlling this switch? And I use the little arrows keys here to say that the location is controlling this switch. And then it says, all right, well, I have castle, forest, and none. I'm going to leave none to none, but I'm going to say play the Explore playlist when I'm in the forest, and play the Suspense when I'm in the castle. I've kind of named these badly. I probably would name them the same thing. I'd probably name these like Explore might be called Forest and Castle. They basically, the game is sending over Castle and I want to play Suspense, but I could relabel these to be identical if I wanted to. All right, cool. So that's all I need to do. Then when I play the switch itself, I've selected it, and so I see it here. Then when I select this little box here, it brings up the locations. These are called state groups. I'm displaying the states, and I can go between the castle and the forest. So when I'm in the forest and I hit play, remember the forest was set up only play this ostinato. And now they're entering into the castle, so I'll kind of simulate that by selecting castle. Then it will flip at the end of the phrase to the castle playlist, and it's going to continue playing the castle music. Then I'm going to flip back to explore to forest, and I'll wait until we're in the middle of the phrase, and I'll flip it. It's going to wait till the end of the phrase to adjust it, and then go back to the ostinato again. Okay, so that's all well and good. It's waiting to the end of the phrase. Maybe I don't want it to wait till the end of the phrase. I'm going to open up a little bit more information about this switch here. And if I go to a tab called Transitions, I can actually change the way it transitions from one state to another state. So right now, you can set up different transitions for different things, but I'm going to use this default transition. Instead of exiting the source at the exit queue, I'm going to have it happen immediately. So now when I go from the forest, not as clean, but sometimes you want immediate transitions. Another thing that we could do is choose a fade out. So these are things that we can do with this switch. So let's say when we switch immediately, I want a 2-second fade on the previous piece of music. So the source, which is the kind of piece we're coming from, fades out after the destination begins. So we can hear that like this. I'm in forest. So the other piece fades, so it's a little bit cleaner. And then I can do that again. So I'm kind of fading things. I can also add a transition segment, like a cymbal swell. Let's do that. Let's go ahead and kind of add some things in here. I'm going to go quickly find a swell, like a cymbal swell, and use it as our transition segment. So I'll pause the video for a second. So I have this wave file. I'm going to drag it into the switch. It's just a cymbal, and we can hear it. And when I'm switching from one to another, what I can do is select this transition, use transition segment, and select that cymbal swell. And that's right here. So now, when I'm playing this switch container, you can see in the transport, that's what I have highlighted. And now I play, and remember, any means none to forest. Then it plays that. Then I go to castle, plays the cymbal swell, and then it plays the next piece. Now let's say I want to overlap the cymbal swell with the next piece. Remember that if I go ahead and select the cymbal swell here, the cymbal swell also has that reverb tail marker, or when the next piece begins. And I'll set it to here so that when the cymbal swell begins, it'll go shh, and then the next piece will start here, and then the rest of the cymbal will play out as a reverb tail over the next playlist that's coming in. So if I save this and hit play on my switch container, again, I'm going to start in the forest where just our ostinato is playing. And then I'll switch to the castle. Remember that the fade that I've set up, this one here, kind of extended maybe too long. I maybe need to kind of reduce the time of that so that it doesn't overlap quite as much. And the cymbal swell here, maybe I want to, extend and have more of the cymbal play before the next piece starts. I could move my reverb tail marker this way. Some other things, let's say I want to get rid of the initial cymbal swell when we go from nothing into a piece. So I can add a new transition here. That's a default transition. And if anything to anything else basically is default. But if I go nothing to anything, I don't want to use the transition. So I have this brand new thing here. When I go from none to any, it's going to not play my cymbal swell anymore. So you can start customizing your transitions. Maybe I want a different transition when I go from forest to castle versus castle to forest, and I can set that up in a different transition here. But now when I play it, it's not going to play the cymbal swell. It's just going to start. Now we'll play the cymbal swell. And it will default to this because there's not one that is specific to the castle to forest or forest to castle. It will rely on this one. But there is a specific one when it goes from none to anything else. And that gives you a little bit of the basics here too. Some other things too, you can actually put a fade in and fade out here on your transition. You can also, you have some options on the destination too. You could have it fade in there as well on the new music. So let's just add a quick fade out, a fade in here. So remember this is the horn, so I'll just do a 1 second little fade. Here. So let's hear what that sounds like. So that when I'm in the forest again, and I go to the castle, it's going to play the cymbal swell and then fade in the castle music. Cymbal swell, then fade in the castle, because I've chosen to fade it in here. All right. And that kind of walks through the entire hierarchy for the music system within Wwise. So again, just to review, we have wave files that go onto tracks, tracks which go into segments, segments which go into playlists, and playlists go into switches. Now, actually, you can create like another switch above this, for example, and then you can have switches within switches, sort of like Inception, a dream within a dream. So let's say, for instance, I have these two locations, but within each location, I have explore and suspense. So in the forest, I have explore and suspense, and the castle, I have explore and suspense. So I would have kind of a switch, suspense and explore, within a location, castle versus forest. So in a game like God of War or a game like Mass Effect, I would have very large music structures for each level defining out these different components. But essentially, most of the music, the interactive music structure we've gone over. waves onto tracks, tracks into segments, segments into playlists, playlists into switches. That covers 80% of the things that you can do within Wwise with regards to music.